Hello there, and welcome to episode 5 of Doctor Who, The Complete Review. And today, we will be finally moving on to a brand new story. And I say brand new, a story that was brand new 53 years ago. It's episode 5, and it is The Dead Planet. We're coming to you live from Media City, UK, with me, Ryan Croughan, and from Leamington Spa with the one, the only, the indomitable Josh Dixon. How are you today?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you, Ryan?
I'm not too bad. It's lovely.
Do you have any amusing anecdotes?
Any amusing anecdotes to begin the podcast? Well, I've just come to Salford, where we're recording this, from Blackpool, especially early for this review.
You've been in Blackpool?
I have indeed been in Blackpool. I've been in Blackpool for the weekend, and now I'm here, ready for a nice Doctor Who chat. What about you? What have you been up to?
I've only been awake for the last 25 minutes.
Were those 25 minutes the 25 minutes you watched The Dead Planet in?
No, they weren't. You called me during those 25 minutes. I watched The Dead Planet last night.
Was it? Well, actually, I'm going to ask you that first. Was it enjoyable?
No, I didn't. Sorry, I watched it before the weekend.
Yes, this is a delayed podcast. We were supposed to do this, record this the previous week, but we both of us had time issues, so we're here.
But it feels like only yesterday.
It does feel like only yesterday. So you watched The Dead Planet, and did it change your life?
It didn't change my life. It didn't change my life back when I first watched it. It's a great episode, but no, it didn't change my life.
No,
I think because obviously it introduces a certain creature, the Daleks.
You can't spoil who it introduces. I mean, it's not like this has been in the public domain for like 53 years.
Yeah, true. But how am I going to give a plot summary?
But we don't know it's the Daleks, though, do we?
No, we don't. We just see a little hand.
And they don't know it's Skara either. They just think it's a petrified jungle. So let's just forget all that and pretend we're there. We don't know what this is.
Okay, all right. I'll give a quick plot summary.
Go in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so the previous story has ended, and it begins where it left off. They're in the TARDIS, they check the radiation levels. They're like, it's all chill, fam, don't worry, radiation's clear. Wait a minute. No, it's not. As soon as they walk away, it's dangerous levels of radiation. That's going to be a problem later, folks, so make sure you bear that in mind. They go outside, and it's a petrified jungle. All the trees are made of stone. You can hit them, and they make physical sounds. OMG, what is going on? There's like a creature that used to be made of metal. What the fudge, fam? Are we in the future? Who knows? So they're walking around. Doctor sees a city and he's like, I will investigate later. And Ian and Barbara are like, no, you won't. You need to get us home, you dick. You're not going anywhere. They all go back to the TARDIS. But at one point, Susan, she's wandering about, as she does. A hand touches her on the shoulder. And unlike her usual character, this is something she doesn't normally do, she screams. That was irony. So they get back to the TARDIS. No one believes her. They're like, Susan, you're just being silly. Shut up. Except Barbara, who has a little heart-to-heart. But, I'm not sure if she really does believe her or if it's just part of this whole ruse to get her to be emotional. They go outside. They find a bag that's full of vials. How did these vials get here? There must be science. Also, the Doctor claims that the ship has run out of mercury, so he just has to go into the city. Seems a bit too good to be true, doesn't it? They all go into the city. All the doors have little sensors that you have to wave your hands in front of. It's all looking metal. There's one wall that Barbara looks past that's clearly been painted to look like a row of corridors, but no one seems to suspect anything about that. And then, out of nowhere, out of the darkness... Oh, yeah, by the way, before this, Ian's made the great suggestion that they all split up in somewhere they've never been before.
Idiots.
When Ian's made it quite clear that someone touched her. But anyway, we'll carry on. They split up. Barbara's walking down past the wall of painted corridors, and boom, out comes a weird creature with 2 hands. It could be anything.
Well, firstly, I must correct you. We only see a little black stub at the end of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the iconic moment. You can't. 2 hands. Gah, get out.
I watched it on my laptop screen. It was all fuzzy. Screw you.
That's okay. Yeah, and my other collection was the files in a little metal case, not a bag.
But it looks like a little bag.
Well, maybe whoever these people are.
Sorry, it looks like because they think it's a mine. Yeah, it is a metal.
There we go. Just before we get angry comments saying, "How dare you? It had one arm," and all this stuff.
Is that the voice of the fans?
That's the voice of the fans who bother to complain about these things.
Nice save.
Well,
we'd said all fans sound like that, we'd have had a shitstorm on our hands.
Well, all fans don't. Lots of fans are actually very intellectual people, like these two talking about it right now.
See what he did there.
Exactly. Firstly, your synopsis, congratulations, and wow! It was amazing.
Wow!
Anyway, The Dead Planet. I think, and I'm going to throw out a really, really, really bold statement. We've had... The previous story is all about people being... The TARDIS crew being trapped and wanting to get out. This is the first story that, through the character of the Doctor... It challenges that and says, right, this is not just about, oh, let's go. This slowly is the start of it changing to more of a show about exploration. And I think that's a good purpose this episode serves. So I'm just going to throw that out off the gate and say, what do you think? What do you think about my rather bold statement?
I absolutely agree, because this episode is more about intrigue than it is about danger. You know the bit where Susan is touched on the shoulder?
Yeah. That
feels more like it's put in there just because at the moment there's no sense of danger. It's all about curiosity and scientific examination, just examining the trees and the environment, apart from the radiation.
Yeah.
Which, if it wasn't a kids' show, I think would be enough as a danger.
Yes, they downplay it, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. But it's more about exploration, and the whole episode sort of survives on whether or not the audience is interested in what might happen.
Yeah.
And I think the city, that's the reason they end on the city, is because you want to find out more when they're in there. There's something about that that's more interesting, I think, than the frozen jungle.
What I was going to say was that this episode, whilst it is about this core idea of exploration, it is all about finding new things, finding new planets. It's what Doctor Who was made to do, really. This is the ground zero of Doctor Who. We've had all the setup. That was sort of like the primer. Now this is where we go into the main course. This is what Doctor Who is now probably going to be about for a lot of its runtime. And when people think Doctor Who, they're more likely to think of an episode like this. Especially for Classic Who. 25 minutes of intrigue, setup, build to boom, big moment. Story will hopefully chug along after that. It's so atypical that it's weird to watch it in order, because I think if we were to get this episode like this, say later on, or even sort of watch it in isolation, it could seem a bit formulaic, but really it's almost trend-setting in just how perfectly it hits all the beats structurally.
It's all about context.
It is indeed. One thing that I think as well lifts this episode, and I probably might not have looked upon it so favourably, and we're going to get right off the bat, as we usually do with characters, to talk about this. I don't think this episode and the whole exploration element around it wouldn't have worked so well if you didn't have the initial reticence of Ian and Barbara being like, oh no, and this is their struggle. They want to get back home, but what do they do? Without that, I don't think this would have worked so well.
It adds a nice little sombre element to it. It does. But I don't know, there was something about... I didn't really care.
Oh, wow, okay, go on.
I just... At this stage, and maybe it was because I think in the first 5 minutes, there was something about Ian and Barbara's performance in this that left me a bit like, you can do better than that. And they picked it up instantly as soon as they got... I think they went back into the TARDIS, and when Barbara had the heart-to-heart. Everything up before that, I was a bit like, I'm not too convinced here. It seems a bit lacking of energy.
That's very true, and it is notable after all the the very high octane action of the end of, like, as we said, the last 10 minutes of the Firemaker, where it all goes really quite, fiery, no pun intended. Here, it is, that first 10 minutes is deliberately slow, I think, and it's reflected in the performances. You've got there's two scenes in that first 10 minutes of Ian and Barbara just on their own, talking in a rather melancholy way, and I bought into that. I bought into that melancholy as part of the atmosphere, helped by the setting and the sound design. I thought that was, you couldn't really have a more energized performance in something so dead of a surrounding. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, that's true. But I just think the adventurous part of you watch that and you're fair enough, that's why you're sad it's not. But then you see the Doctor, who wants to go where the audience really wants the characters to go.
Yes.
As sad as it is about Ian and Barbara, I don't think anyone can deny that what the characters really want is to see what's in that city.
That's true, but once again, I bring up context. This is their very, very first sort of... They've had that first adventure. They're like, right, we've done that. That weird thing happened. Can we just go home now? It would have been conspicuous if it wasn't there, you must admit.
Oh, no, I'm completely agreeing with you, Ryan. I'm just saying, as an audience...
Yes, but isn't that the point, that we want to go with the Doctor, and this is where we start to change? Our viewpoint starts to shift from, Ian and Barbara, they're in the right, Ian should be the leader of the group and all that stuff, in Firemaker. Isn't this where our view shifts and goes, actually, we care about the Doctor now. He's more of a, to coin term, lovable rogue in this. You know what I mean? He's been a dick,
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying that the way they presented it has worked on my mind.
Okay. Have you got anything to say about those Ian and Barbara scenes? Because I actually quite like them. One of the things that I wanted to bring up here is that they don't have that, and it's interesting because I think later on in Doctor Who, once again, sorry to bring up the future, we shouldn't really be doing this, but the whole TARDIS time travel thing becomes more of a, wow, this is amazing, and just like being blown away by everything. This, it takes a really interesting standpoint on sort of companions being estranged from their surroundings. With, I got it around here, Barbara's line, she's coming to terms with the idea of being in another place. It's so alien to her. It's the line, she wants to be back with things I recognise and trust, and things that she can rely on. This idea of like actually relying on things and being like, oh yeah, I've got something that I can really set my mind on. Whereas here, they've genuinely been, the word, as they say, uprooted. How do you think that's presented well with those little scenes, those two scenes of them chatting?
Yeah, I think it is. It's a lot more human and realistic, I think, for the absolute scale of what they're doing, travelling to different worlds and being in danger, that is completely sort of skated over a lot of the time in modern Doctor Who. Yeah, it's important that you would have these little discussions. You should see people being afraid, because it's a dangerous universe that is new. It's new to these people who used to believe that you couldn't travel through space. I think there should be more reactions like this.
Yeah, I think it is important that it is melancholy, because I don't think there's any other way you can do this. I don't think this should be a wow moment, if you know what I mean. I don't know, what do you think? Do you think it would have worked if they'd come out in the jungle and been bewildered by it and just like, oh my god, or do you think it works as more of a, oh no, what have we done, quiet moment?
As much as I talk about like the whole energy and everything, I think that's just that was me viewing it as a casual viewer.
Yeah.
Like, if you're invested in this, then it should be somber, especially after the immense danger they were in just an episode before. There's that you wouldn't come out from nearly being killed by the cavemen just for making fire, and that's the first time you've ever travelled, to coming into the next place, which is a petrified jungle, for God's sake, and going, wow, you just wouldn't.
We're going to have to get T-shirts printed one day with the phrase "wow" on them.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, I was going to say, and I don't mean to use the term, but I think this is one of the most important grounding sort of foundations in. This is, of course, Ian and Barbara, that we've had 4 episodes of them, it's all new. The line, when Barbara says she needs things to rely on, and Ian says, well, you've got me. I'm going to just plant that seed there, Josh, and say, do we think that this is it just that's something that stands out to me and makes me go, a proper moment?
Yeah, I think he's trying to be all smooth.
Do you think he's trying to be a little smooth, or do you think he means it? I think that's a really, really nice moment.
I think he does mean it, because he's Ian. He's your standout guy. He's your man of morals and family values that the audience can rely upon. Maybe he was just using it as a chat-up line, but let's face it, he probably meant it, and that is so intolerably nice of him.
Yeah, and I think this is the start of their sort of development of their relationship, and as many Doctor Who fans know, there's I'm not going to use the word ship, but it's one of those situations, and you're like, oh, aren't they lovely? There's a real care and affection, but of course, yeah. I'm not going to be sitting here and saying, oh, I wish in that forest Ian would have grabbed Barbara by the tits and shoved her against one of those trees. It's just a you know what I mean? It's an affectionate...
You should give some context for these kind of statements.
It's one of these lovely, quiet moments of just genuine kindness and affection and love. And I hate this. And I'm going to bring this up now and just get it out of the way. I hate when... I'm getting riled up. I hate when fans say there is no emotion in classic Doctor Who. And it really pisses me off. It grinds me so much because... There is. It's right there in front of your face. But just because we don't have characters bawling their eyes out with tears, just because we don't have a massive violin score in the background, does not mean at all it's any less emotional. In fact, when you have to stick 20 billion violins underneath an emotional scene, doesn't that just show that on its own it isn't as emotional because you need all that stuff plastered on top? That moment is so much more emotional than plenty of those moments in just modern television in general.
Yeah, but where are the explosions, Ryan?
We don't need explosions, Josh.
That's not Doctor Who then, is it?
I think I will. Yeah, and then there's also Barbara. Barbara actually says this, and I want to ask what you actually think of this, because I'm not sure about this couple of lines where Barbara says that she is, she wishes she was more like Ian, and that she is a very unwilling adventurer, which is a great line on its own. But if we go back to An Unearthly Child, Ian was the skeptic then. Now it seems to have totally shifted, and that Barbara's more of the longing, pining for home, and Ian's taking it more in his stride. What do you think of that?
I think that might just be the lack of a proper head writer. A little bit of inconsistency there.
Or do you think I was more implying, and I think it's deliberate?
Oh, here we go.
No, go on. Because in episode... We actually commented on this. Barbara is in episode 2, and she's the one reassuring Ian. It's almost she thinks, that she's taking it too much in her stride, and now it's kind of hit her like, oh God. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got a point there.
And I think that's more...
from a head writer comment.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, we had a script editor called David Whittaker who was wonderful and did great stuff for the show. So you'll have to take away your comment. But no,
I take that comment back, and I apologise for not doing thorough research of the behind-the-scenes workings.
Oh my word! No, and I think that's. I was asking, what do you think of that? Do you think that's right, as in a character progression, for us to go back and now go, actually, no, she is a bit, she maybe she did take it a bit too much in her stride.
It did have to hit her at some point, I think. It would anyone, and I think there is a moment of genuine truth there when she shows that sort of exhaustion. It was what we were saying before about the way people too much react. Like, wow, this is, again, it's just a good example of a genuine human moment.
You know what? I think that sums that up point nicely. Have you got anything you're burning and dying to talk about?
Oh, yes, actually. It's the bit where when Barbara goes, don't you just wish something would happen to him sometimes, referring to the Doctor?
Yeah, go on.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Do you I think it was meant to be a heartfelt moment, but I don't know. What do you think?
It It just seems like after the caveman stuff, when it's established that they can really all get killed, it just seems like a bit of a poor taste joke.
Yeah, I did think that, and I was more. It was more after sort of Ian's comment, and I think the thing that makes it okay is we're like, oh, we better go and look for him. You don't want him to hurt himself. But still, I've got to admit, it does stick out a bit like a sore thumb, doesn't it?
It really does. I sort of watched it a bit like, that's not okay.
Do you think it? Do you think it sounds like Barbara? Because that's one thing that shocked me. I was like, I can imagine Ian maybe saying that, but not Barbara.
No, I don't think it does.
Now that's where I'll say script editor, get on that. That's where I'll say that.
Are you sure he existed, Ryan?
I'm sure he existed. Google it.
I believe you.
Should we get it out of the way and discuss the metal animal?
Yeah, all right. I don't really care that much about the metal animal. If he'd been moving, I think he would have looked awful. Just solitary, you can sort of go, oh, he's been frozen and, he's been petrified, radiation's got him. It's cool. It's fine.
Yeah, and to throw a bit of behind-the-scenes information at you again, that character, he is called a Magnodon.
Thank you.
Now you're going to go away and remember that forever, which is the first alien ever to appear in Doctor Who.
Really?
Bar, of course, the Doctor. And because everyone says the which are about to appear, are the first monsters, but technically it's that little guy there.
The Cybermen.
What do you mean? What about them?
They're the first to appear.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? Yeah.
I was taking the piss, but because you didn't hear me on the first time, like all timing on that joke was lost. Now I just sound like I genuinely believe that that's what's coming.
The episode's called The Cybermen, though, isn't it? That's what the story's called.
See, now I've responded too late. You see how that ruins the interplay between us?
Yeah, I do. I apologise. I hold my hands up.
This is why we shouldn't have banter, and I apologise for that.
We should have banter. There's always a space for banter. Should we talk about Susan? Because she actually got to do some stuff this week.
Yeah, that was good for her.
Good for her. She found a flower.
Oh, they're really not helping with this character development stuff, aren't they?
No. Well, firstly, I think Susan, she's had a rough time. She sort of had an earthly child and the Cave of Skulls. Yeah, all very good. Last two episodes, though, she basically ran around and got, other than that really morbid moment where she found out skulls can burn too. That was pretty much it. We've had a bit of a light time for Susan stuff. It's all mostly been Ian and Barbara focused. I think you'll agree.
Yeah. In this, though, when she says, no one believes me, and she sort of bursts into tears, I did genuinely feel a little bit of, for her. Because you sort of get what it's like for her to be the youngest in the group.
I think this one, rather than focusing on her alien qualities like the first few episodes, this is where we see a real shift in, now she's a teenager, she's a child, how does she deal with that? You know what I mean?
Yes.
The whole bit, she's still quite childish, because this sort of little excitement, and I think, we were saying about not having wow moments. I think it's important to have that little finding of a flower and being like, wow, because otherwise, we said it a couple of weeks ago, it can be bloody depressing. So it's nice to have a little, oh, look, she's found a flower, how lovely. It's that childlike sense of glee that can carry you through the, shit, we're in a radiation-infested frozen jungle. How depressing.
It's a long time before this series actually sort of lightens up a little bit. It doesn't really come until, I'd say, Reign of Terror, maybe?
Yeah, or end of the brink of disaster episode, maybe. But we're looking forward.
Like anything at the end of that will seem like... Anyway, we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. No. What do you think of all that? Do you think it's? I don't know. I like how it's giving her that more childish thing to do, but in a more innocent way, rather than just she's just going to scream. That whole thing with the flower, it is quite nice. And then she goes back to find another one. It's one of those little things. Once again, human, as you said, one of those little ordinary things that if we were exploring a new place, we'd probably do it. I mean, we might not. We might not. But I mean, people, you would do something like that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd probably have a look around and pick something up as a souvenir. It's all quite innocent. Although, at the same time, Are they playing too much on the child thing? Because bear in mind, her and the Doctor have been travelling for a while.
Mm-hmm.
She must know that danger is a thing. I just don't know if she would go round that. And all the talk of we want to get home, I think in this episode, if it wasn't for the hand on the shoulder thing, everyone does seem to forget that how dangerous. Maybe they just genuinely believe that the place is, everything is frozen, so no one can possibly be on this planet.
Yeah.
And that's why they're so sort of casual and they're strolling around. I don't know.
Well, no, I was actually going to bring up that point. Do you think it is too childish? Because it comes kind of bolt out of the blue, but then suddenly with the scene with Barbara later, it's kind of established this is how she's acting for this episode. And I guess I like that, but
it's that phrase you just said, how she's acting for this episode.
Exactly, and this is what I mean. Is it
consistency?
Yeah, is it like, you know, can you look at this and go, oh, it's nice to have this change, it's nice to see someone in a different light, or is it that this is vying too far away from the character?
I think it's going too far away from the character. It doesn't go too far. It's within the realms of what Susan could be, but it's just sort of all over the place on this spectrum.
As in, child and teenager kind of, we're stuck somewhere in the middle.
Morbids, or, you know, a just sort of out of touch cool kid listening to music which is not really cool, and that's what makes her cool. They don't seem to know what the audience wants. That's what I think it is. I think they're trying to guess what the audience want from this character, so they're just throwing out everything they can in these first couple of episodes to sort of see what works.
You know what? I can totally agree with that.
It's like they're feeding it to a focus group.
Those didn't exist back in 1963, though.
I said like.
Yeah, I mean, true. Don't jump. Do not jump on me.
I can't. We're over Skype.
No, what would you think of the scene with her and Barbara? You said you felt some genuine emotion.
You know what? I did. Because it kind of, that's the moment where it works. They realise the fact that she's the youngest very well, but you kind of feel like, yeah, that must be really tough. Like, you've got all these adults sort of roaming about making statements of, oh, the world's like this, so we have to get home. Don't worry, I'm going to make some big scientific investigation. And she's just there. And I think they can often forget about her. When they're exploring the world, she doesn't seem to have a lot of use. And I think it gets to her that she is, in fact, the youngest. When something actually happens to her and no one else believes it, that must be horrible. She's kind of like, well, if the Doctor had said that, or if Barbara or Ian had said that, would it still have the same reaction?
You know what? I think that's very true, because if Barbara had said it, Ian would jump to her corner. The Doctor had said it, both Ian and Barbara will be like, oh no, because he's sort of established now as the authority. It is very true, and I think that's what makes me forgive the whole flower stuff and make me believe it, because Susan is in her own little world in this, and she kind of has been, and this is the moment where Barbara takes on a rather motherly role. We start to see there, actually, the teacher thing is gone now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The teacher-student relationship is gone, and now we're back to, she's treating him like not only like a friend, but maybe a bit too motherly, I think, with that whole sort of literally sitting her down, to the point where I like how in that scene where Barbara's talking to him, Susan is hiding and crouched inside one of the TARDIS roundels on the wall. It's quite like she's literally backed into a corner, but of course the bedroom corner in this case is a giant circle on the wall.
Of course. I think it's not too overplayed at all, because I think it's part of Barbara's awkwardness.
Yeah.
Like, she's agreed to go and talk to her, but she can only do it as a teacher, usually, I think, is the reason for this. Barbara's not a mother in reality.
No, she's a teacher. Teacher first.
Yeah, she's a teacher first, but this requires more than that.
You know what? Yeah, and I think that... Yeah, I think you've summed it up nicely there. It is like somebody who doesn't know what to do, but they're trying desperately to sort of try.
Yeah, and I think that's nice. She's genuinely trying, also the reason she does that is because the Doctor feels, because of the age divide, he can't connect. And again, that sort of moment of confession and admittance is also quite a nice character moment.
But basically, it's words to the effect of, I feel I can't really connect with Susan, that she needs someone younger, that, because he's a grandfather, and I guess there is that. And this because they're starting to talk in those terms, Barbara's acting motherly with Susan. The doctor admits that, he's a granddad, but, there's still there's that massive age gap, a massive change of interest between the two. This is where it starts becoming a bit more familial.
Yeah.
And that's typified by the scene that comes straight after, where they're all sitting there tucking into some grub.
Oh, I don't know how I feel about this scene.
I was waiting. It's so very 1960s. This is the future. Yeah,
it really is. It's like a vintage. If you ever watch, there's a series of games called Fallout. Mm-hmm. That sort of takes you. It's set in the future, mm-hmm. where interesting radiation sort of destroys the whole planet.
Oh, interesting.
But just before that, before the bombs fell, sort of the adverts, it was very much like the kind of 1960s style world. So any promotion they did for this game, a lot of it was set out like a 1960s vintage ad for things advertising things as if they were now, but obviously the game was set in the future.
Yeah.
And it felt like that kind of 60s, this food machine can give us anything with just a touch of a button. Oh my God, it's real, That's, and I don't know how I felt about that.
This is where we got to sit back and go, hang on, this isn't a modern-day drama. This is a drama made a long, long time ago. And I think it's useful for that. But, of course, to our modern eyes, when that scene came up, and I knew it was coming, I was like, yeah, I get what it's going for. But, it would be. But then would you rather they sit around a table and the doctor's there with his frying pan frying some non-salty bacon?
I just like some bacon and eggs. Bacon and eggs, yes. I think we could do that.
It is. I don't know. What do you see? Does it work in the context, or does it genuinely take you out?
It works in the context because they should. I don't know. Actually, I feel like in a futuristic ship like that, they could have just sat around the table, and they're still surrounded by walls that are unlike anything you've ever seen in a house.
Yes, true. I do. It does. I don't know. Does it stick out like a sore thumb in terms of the episode itself?
It does in terms of tone and just the pace of the entire thing.
And one thing I do like about that food machine though scene is the doctor's little joke about how the bacon shouldn't be salty because it's English, and everyone laughs. It's like, I think that may be our first instance of an actual joke.
I know, it's not even that funny.
It's not even... interesting fact, though, that line was added by William Hartnell in rehearsals.
Classic Bill. Yeah. Can't remember his own lines at times, but he adds his own in. What a legend.
And it wasn't even that funny.
What a cheeky fucker.
He must have found it hilarious, though, which is why it's there. I didn't think it was that funny, but just because I knew William Hartnell added it, I can imagine him sitting there in rehearsal and going, "What do you think if I added this line about non-salty bacon?" Like, that's what makes it more funny. But I don't know. Maybe that's just me being silly.
I bet he thought it was the funniest thing in the world.
I also got a distinct Willy Wonka vibe from all that scene.
Yeah, it was a bit. The food machine that can make anything.
It's like the everlasting gobstopper. Or what is it? The ones where you can eat it and you get like a 3-course meal when you eat it?
Yeah, I think that is the everlasting gobstopper.
Yeah. It is very Willy Wonka. And
oh, no, wasn't that the... that was the gum. That was the gum. Because
yes, what's the name of the gum?
I can't remember, but it was the pudding, because it makes her turn into a massive berry.
Exactly. And that really made me think. It was like, oh, and I can taste the bacon, and then I can taste the egg. It just felt so... You expected Ian to turn into a giant piece of bacon.
Now that would be a cliffhanger.
The petition starts here. Someone Photoshop that. Speaking of that amazing food machine scene, there's a little line in there which, once again, I think is a bit silly to be included. But after Susan's done all that sort of, I want your opinion on it. If Susan's basically come out to Barbara about her believing that this hand touched her, she then basically, under her breath as well, comes into that food machine scene and says, "Sorry, I was so silly just now."
Yeah, I think though.
And I'm like, is it? Is her, I can see where they were going for, and she's literally just saying like, oh, sorry, I was just saying under her voice to appease the doctor. Like, oh yeah, you know, I'm just a little child. I don't matter. I didn't like that, but I guess that's the point. I felt genuinely sorry for her when she said that. I was like, oh, you know, don't apologise for genuinely being tapped on the back because your granddad doesn't believe it because he's like, no, he's definitely dead.
Yeah, I don't think there's much point looking too far into that.
Okay.
I think it is just trying to appease. I wouldn't worry about that.
I was not worried, to assure you. Sorry. What do we think? You mentioned the doctor, you know, it all being too good to be true. Would you like to start a discussion about Mr. Hartnell this episode? Bar his bacon joke.
Yeah, he's so desperate to explore. It's the first time you see him really excited about the world that he's in. He sees that city, and it sort of reminds you why the Doctor's travelling. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that there's in the future there's going to be a lot of things like, I did it because I was scared and all of this like massive drama, but in reality, you know, I feel like he's an explorer and he's exploring. At this point, it's nice and simple. So he sees the city and he genuinely wants to go in. So he says, oh no, but Barbara's like, but Ian says, no, we'll be going back to the ship, you're not going anywhere without us. But then, oh my god, there's mercury shortage, you know, as there is. And then he goes, oh well, I don't have any spare mercury because this has just never happened before. Why would I carry a spare anything for a ship that travels through time when we might be in a place that we can't get mercury in? Like, what if they were in the Stone Ages and they ran out of mercury? They'd be in the Stone Ages forever. But no, everyone still believes him. And he says, we have to go into the city. It's the Doctor being a little bit manipulative again, but it's, you know, it's good bands.
I like it because it's a twist on the sort of style of character we saw from the first few episodes, which is where it's all very... the Doctor is clearly... He's an anti-hero throughout the whole thing. And here, yes, he's still... that sort of character. He's still willing to play with his friends. He's still willing to not basically be like, oh, you know, genuine affection. It's more, I want to do it, so I'll do it. He's still selfish, just as selfish as we said he was back in the Forest of Fear. But because we know him a bit more now, we know he's really relishing this. It is that, as I said at the start, the Doctor's a lovable rogue, I think, in this.
Yeah.
But we kind of question that because we're saying, oh, you know, there's that lovely shot where... you know, for one of the little fade to blacks where he laughs and looks at the little mercury thing, you know, laughing to himself, that little content. Yeah, I've done that. I'm, you know, look at me, aren't I a boss? But then, you know, it's really quite lovely, and we're like, oh, you know, oh, you've just. And we're realising that we're sympathising with somebody who's just tricked all of his friends who have gone through a near-death experience, and this could potentially endanger them in another. We're like,
however.
Is it right that we should sympathise and be like, oh, to the Doctor when he's quite a dick move?
Yeah, but given that none of them actually believe that there's any living presence on the planet...
Yes.
No real reason for him not to be able to go into the city?
Bar Susan.
But, you know, I think we've established that everyone except Barbara, who really might not even believe her and is only just saying it to comfort Susan, has essentially just gone, oh, shut up, you silly prick.
It's very true. One thing I do like, and it is that I mentioned it in a couple of weeks ago, is that whole... It is, and you mentioned it. It's not more exploration in a sort of more excitable sense. It is almost purely scientific. Like the Doctor hears a couple lines here. I intend to find out, and he keeps saying intriguing. It is like he's genuinely getting a thrill out of finding new things, but it's coming from more of an analytical perspective rather than just wow. But there's a bit of that in there. You know, it's really, I don't know. It's a different approach to it all.
Yeah, which is. It's quite... There's still a sense of realism in these early episodes.
Yes.
They're quite nice to watch. I thought I'd find them boring, but it's actually... It grips you a little bit more.
Yes, it is.
I think that's why the food machine moment sort of takes the kind of connection away a little bit. I think it distances you as a viewer.
Yeah, I must talk about this and get it here. What do you think of the visuals for the story? For this episode, I mean.
Only way I can describe it is when you're going through the forest, it looks like you're looking at an X-ray picture. Maybe that's just me, but the contrast of colours and that sort of bright harshness to it all.
Yeah, I think it's very simple once again in the presentation of it. Like for example, you know, the shot where Ian is touching the tree, a bit of dust falls down, but to show the trees are static, you have a big wind machine blowing on Ian's face. It's all very simple in its construction, but it has a realism to it.
Yes, it does.
And one thing I must say, to talk about direction for a few moments, is most of these shots throughout this episode are all shot in sort of big four shots. So you'll have, say, from the legs up, all four characters standing there. Or you'd have, all of them standing there in the surroundings. It's all about scope. It's all about size and showing the surroundings, rather than that we got a lot of in the last story, big emotional close-ups.
Well, in this, it's more about the world, and it's more about communicating a planet to us. I think that's a very clever choice in terms of direction.
Yeah, and this is, once again, I must stress this is what I want to do about the review, because people could look at this now and just go, cheap, tawdry rubbish. But clearly, thought had to be put into this. All this thought had to be put into the shots that they were making. And I think one of my faghrite scenes in the episode, and why it is so tense, is the management of that in changing it to change the scenario. So we've had all these big, quite stagey shots of four people standing in a forest. The only time we properly go tighter in on the shot for a close-up is the scene where Susan gets touched. That sounds really bad. I'll rephrase that. Where Susan is trying to get a flower and she thinks she's got touched on her back. And the whole shot is shot following her as she turns around as almost like as a close-up. It's really quite claustrophobic, and with the music and the dark lighting, I think that is really well done in just changing the mood thanks to all those elements coming together. Yeah.
It works very well. What do you think?
Go on.
What do you think about the city as a contrast to the forest?
As a visual?
Yeah.
I quite like it. Once again, it's got that quite nostalgic 1960s view of the future, and I imagine we're going to be saying a lot of this throughout classic Doctor Who. It's a product of its time, but there's something quite nice about that, and I think it is deliberately, well, of course, it's deliberately contrasting, unlike the forest, where the forest is all big, airy spaces, as soon as we get in there, they're all very tight shots, very close shots, or they're shot at, I don't know if you noticed when Barbara was walking through the corridors, there was a couple of shots shot at an angle, or from the view of their feet.
I didn't actually. I wasn't paying attention to that.
I was wondering if you also you probably noticed this, the scene where Barbara is trapped in this small little capsule and she puts her hand literally on the camera.
No.
Oh right. I'll show you a picture later. But basically, it's all about changing the viewpoint. We're in a totally different scenario, so not only does the location change, but the direction changes to view that. Like, when they're standing at the doors waiting for Barbara.
Yes.
I know it's this restriction of having small studio space, but it's literally a small, claustrophobic little alcove compared to this, the forest, which is made quite well, I must say, to be big.
Yeah, and the sort of slowness of it, though, and the struggle of filming it kind of adds to its charm.
Yes.
Like when one of them moves the hand over the sensor, but the door takes just a second or two too long to open.
Yeah.
And I think it should have done. It sort of adds to it, this kind of rundown city, and it works.
Yeah. What do you think of? You mentioned some of the painted backdrops in this episode.
I didn't think they needed it. They clearly what they did was they painted a row of corridors on a wall.
Yeah.
So to make a small space look like it was a massive space. But I don't think they needed to do that. I don't think they needed to say this is massive, because if you're doing it and it looks tacky, I'd rather have just seen a wall there, because there's enough going on.
Yeah, those corridors. I do think the actual look of the sort of set corridors with the shape of it deliberately designed so they fit a certain character. Nudge, nudge. I really liked all that, and the one backdrop I thought was really good was where Ian they all walk into the city through that sort of gateway, and behind you've got the backdrop of the rest of the city because of course they're there. It's got to look like they're inside this massive sprawling building.
Yeah.
What do you think of the model shots of the city to tie up our discussion of visuals?
Quite impressive seeing them, seeing something like that for the first time. For its time, I thought, yeah, clearly a lot of effort had gone in.
Yeah, I really did enjoy that, and how each time we got a shot of the model shot, we'd have a distinctive musical sting.
It's sort of the first moments of genuine and great underscoring, as had the first story actually. But it's still not big and grand with 60 violins and all that.
I prefer this. As I said, that scene with Susan in the little forest part where she gets tapped on the shoulder. I was going to say where she gets touched again, but it just doesn't sound right.
There's no way of you making that sound okay.
No, the music in that, I think that is brilliant. It immediately just comes in, sets up the scene, and as soon as it's done, boom. It's really, the music throughout is minimalist, but it's... can I use the word avant-garde? Because there is no other television show that would use music like this.
Go on, use it.
Yeah, it is weird, it's experimental, but it's definitely alien. I think episodes like this would not work in a modern environment simply because scoring and musical scoring does not work like this anymore. It's not short bursts of let's heighten the emotion of this scene, and I think that's what music's for. Let's heighten the emotion of this moment. Let's highlight this moment is important. Whereas now it is blanket. It's all important. It's all amazing, without any atmosphere because it's also generic. It's set up its own world, its own feel, thanks to the music, and I couldn't credit it more. The use in this episode is great.
The cliffhanger.
Oh, are we coming on to the cliffhanger already?
Okay, well. It's now viewed as one of the most iconic moments in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. I think this is probably, and it's a bold statement, but this is the most iconic Doctor Who cliffhanger.
I do, however, wish, in the next episode, which I can't talk about, but when a lot of these creatures are all in the room and one of the greatest shots in the show's history, in my opinion, happens. Do you know which one I mean?
I know exactly which one you mean. I can't wait to talk about that one.
Yeah, knowing that it's all about context, really. At the time, this would have been amazing. It's the first creature that's not that is a threat.
Yes.
That's coming in, and that is brilliant. But something that was historical is now becoming quite alien. And imagine being a kid, you'd be like, "What the hell is going on?"
And I think this scene as well, it's all about the build-up.
Yes. It's an entire episode of build-up.
Yeah, I think this episode is literally, it could be called Build Up the Movie. It's literally like we start off with these characters rallying and sort of reflecting on what they've gone through. And as the reflection changes, we get a nice couple of character moments. And then, city. Doctor being a dick. Bum, 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 bum. On we go. And then we come on to the home run. It is so well-paced.
Oh, yeah.
It's so well-paced. And not at all a moment did I think when watching this is a bit slow. I don't know about you.
No, I didn't really. I was sort of distanced, like I said, by the food machine bit, but, it was still characters bonding. It flows really nicely, this episode.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I don't think we had that in the Caveman episode. I think the flow could sometimes be a bit uninterrupted. Could we be cutting from sort of Tsar doing his nonsense and then back to the Doctor and crew? The flow was a bit all over the place sometimes.
But there was enough to keep you transfixed.
Of course, yeah. Here, the flow is really nice, and I think that's what this episode's all about, and it's going to be tilted on its head thanks to that great cliffhanger. Have you got anything? I don't know if we can say anything about that cliffhanger. Bar what's already been said, the performance is great. Probably the single best scream in Doctor Who ever.
Yes.
The fade out of the scream, it's just not a solid cut. It fades out, but it fades out before the title card comes up.
It's one of the first perfect cliffhangers, I'd say.
Yes, I'd say this is the first perfect cliffhanger after episode 1's, because episode 1's was it's the setup cliffhanger. It's this is Doctor Who cliffhanger. This is the perfect. I don't know. I think this is the perfect cliffhanger. And one thing I always say about this is the first and one of the only shock cliffhangers of the Hartnell era. All the Cavemen ones, bar episode 1, were more ponderous. It was like, oh look, there's some skulls that have been broken open. I hope that doesn't happen to us. It takes a couple of moments for the initial shock to go in. This is the one where, instead of being more melodic, it suddenly goes, shit, there's a creature. What's going to happen next week? And it's so instant. Because it's so instant, you're like, oh crap. And you sit there throughout the credits going, that was bloody good. And you wait and you want to watch the next. It's great. I'm just going to rant and rave how good it is. Is there anything you can add?
Just the POV shot of the creature's great. A great idea.
Yeah.
And it leaves you wanting more. It's one of the episodes where I want to get onto the next one so much, and that not every cliffhanger in the show makes me do that.
No, and also the music again. I must say, over that section was great. I think, for example, the music throughout the Cavemen story, bar the percussive stuff, when it went into more like fluty, oboe-ish stuff, it sometimes didn't suit the theme. That music there, clearly created just for that cliffhanger, fits like a glove.
Yeah.
And I was taken away by it. So what? I think this is the first week we can resoundingly say, yeah, what a cliffhanger without any deliberation.
Which is nice.
It's nice. It brings us together. Would you like to then, before you go, is there any points before we move on to our best moment in scoring?
Not really, except maybe the overall arc of the way Doctor Who's going.
Go on.
I think I'm really glad they decided to take the science fiction move, because it added there was a sense of adventure in this episode that I think was lacking from the cavemen stories.
I think this one is the Cavemen stories was all about running away from danger. This is more like running to it, literally.
Yeah, which is what the show becomes, and it's a nice little transgression. I was quite happy.
One thing I've just got to say, and it's one thing that I really liked. It's one of the first instances of the Doctor acknowledging that he's very old, and it's the bit where he did it in Forest of Fear, but here even more so, where when he gets to the city, he's like, oh, I've got to have a sit down, I've got to have a sit around, oh, I'm knackered, and when they're leaving for the ship, he even says, Ian, you lead us, you know what I mean? And it's now, it's not that battle that it was before between the Doctor and Ian of who is the actual leader. It's now like, oh, you know, they're all just getting along and helping each other, and the Doctor's fine to say, yeah, you know what, I'm an old man, I need help sometimes. Like Susan, at some point in this episode, actually holds him and helps him up, what I thought was really lovely. You know, they're starting to, you can see by those little non-dialogue moments, they're all coming together.
Yeah, and they're starting to come really close to one another and rely upon one another. It's weird seeing the Doctor like that, knowing that, you know, later on he becomes that David Tennant running around, or even Tom Baker, who lived in people.
Yeah.
It's weird to see.
I like that, though. The Doctor, it is that little moment, they're walking into the city and Susan's helping him. You know, it's those little things that you know, if it wasn't there, you wouldn't be saying, oh, well Susan would have done this. It's just because it's there, you go, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And I also want to say, just to bring it up very, very, very quickly, this episode, a bit of behind the scenes before we go into our final section, this episode was actually filmed twice.
What?
The first version of this episode was recorded, and due to a tape error, because of one of the effects at the start, do you know in the first few minutes, the camera, as you said, is like sort of X-ray-like. The visuals have been all overexposed, so it looks like you've just had a misty forest fire.
Yeah.
Which looks great, and then of course it fades into normal camera. When trying to do that, it's on the first go, the magnetic tape effects of that damaged the rest of the recording, so it was unusable. So the rest of this episode had to be re-recorded again. So there's a very interesting fact. Some of you might not find it interesting, but you can have it anyway.
Cheers. I enjoyed that.
So, Josh, your favourite moment of the episode? I think I'm very tired on this one. Go on, throw us your bone.
Usually, I like to find something that's a bit sort of quirky or nice, but in this, because it's such a strong moment, I have to go with the ending cliffhanger.
Yeah.
It's too iconic to shy away from.
And this is what I must actually voice my concern here. I am worried that in the future, when there's episodes which you know it's an iconic episode, there's a moment in there that has been, seen hundreds of times by fans, that we're going to go, oh, it's that. And I always want to pick something different. But I feel sometimes there's a reason these things are so iconic.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can't be that hipster. We've got to go with the mainstream. Are you going with that moment then?
Yeah, I think I am.
I mean, personally for me, it's the bacon joke.
I knew it would be.
No, it's the ending. I'm going to say, instead of just the cliffhanger, it's the build-up to the cliffhanger. It's a lot of stuff with Barbara walking around where she gets stuck in the lift, and the lift is really quite well done with a nice little shadow effect to show that she's going down. All that stuff, all that build-up of her being trapped and isolated, really well shot as well, and goes nicely into the cliffhanger. I'll say the last sort of 3 minutes of Barbara wandering around, just to be different, leading into that, and of course including the cliffhanger, because how can I not?
I'll give you that.
So, anything else?
I do have a surprising rating.
Whoa. Okay. Let's hold the phone. I'm gonna. Should I go first?
Yeah, go on. I say it's not actually that surprising. It's surprising. It surprised me.
I am going to give this episode. Now I'm actually quite. I'm on the edge. I don't know exactly.
Of destruction.
Not yet.
Boom.
You said in episode 1 that full circle joke will be really funny in a couple of years' time.
Oh, it will be.
You'll come back to that.
Oh, how will that?
No, I'm actually torn between a 9 and a 10, but I don't know if I can give it a 10 simply because of the food machine seeming a bit odd. But I think that's our modern eyes. I think at the time that would have made perfectly sense. As I said,
I'm giving it a 9 because of that. And because of the injecting a sense of danger, just because they felt like they had to with the hand on Susan's shoulder.
I think because it needed that kick and it gave it the kick, and the scene where she actually got touched, where she got tapped on the shoulder, was so good. I'm going to say. And this is I'm so torn between 9 and 10, but you know what? I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna say 10.
Boom! He's done it. We've got ourselves another 10.
Another 10. Firemaker got a 9 because I couldn't do it, but it was really enjoyable. It's one of those episodes that it's just Doctor Who. This is perfect Doctor Who. Yeah, it's got a silly monster, but I don't care. The Doctor's loving it. He's talking about the actual science behind it. It's reveling in what it is and in the world. And mostly important, I think this episode has some great science fiction ideas.
Yeah. It is brilliant. It is brilliant.
It's got, that whole idea of, how did the creature get solidified and all this stuff. And then the idea of the jungle. It's a jungle that is meant to be lush and lifelike, but it's actually dead and stony. And to mention him, Terry Nation, who wrote this and is the creator of a certain creature we're going to talk about next week, so therefore he's very, very rich. He is great at core ideas. And we'll see this throughout his stories that we're going to talk about throughout the year. But just to give a note to the writer, because we didn't really mention it in first story, but I think we will probably talk about more when they become more important about the writers of the show. I think Terry Nation is great at core science fiction ideas, big ideas that entice you or make you go, that's interesting. Oh, what's that? What's going to happen there? And I think this episode is full of that. And because it combines those moments with a good flow and a good build-up, I think it's. I'm going to say it is flawless, Josh.
All right. I'm going to give it a 9, and I will probably go back on this because I'm giving it a 9 based on minor niggles. But
if they niggled you, then there's a reason they niggled you.
Yeah, exactly. I think 9.
And he's sticking with his 9. So I'd like to know, and this is the first because it's all there, and we're very excited. Tell us what you thought. Josh, would you like to say where they can voice their opinion?
Yes, you can. We now have a so by the time you hear this, you'll probably like, hang on a minute, you've had Facebook and Twitter for a while, but for us, this has been filmed just as it's been put up, so if you want to trace the dates back, then by all means do. But we have a Facebook and Twitter now. It's The Complete Review.
Doctor Who TCR.
Doctor Who TCR, which stands for The Complete Review.
Yeah.
And leave us a Facebook comment or a message or a tweet. Send us hate mail, whatever it is you see fit to do.
Go on.
We're there.
Yeah, and of course you're watching this. You'll be watching this video on YouTube, so feel free to like or don't if you don't want to, or just comment, please. Any chance we can get for you to tell us what you thought of this episode, or to go, yeah, I really agree with that, or no, Josh, you're right wanker for giving it a 9 out of 10. Just tell us, and we would love to talk about it, because clearly, as you can tell by these reviews, there's nothing we love more doing than discussing a 50-year-old show, which, we don't care. It's great, and hopefully you enjoy it as much too. But we do urge you as well, and I must say this, please, if you got to this far point in the review without watching the actual episode, do yourself a favour and go and watch it.
Yeah, you silly pricks.
Because we've just spoilt it all for you, and that's really bad. So, always try, if you can, watch the episode and then come to us, and hopefully we'll evaluate it a bit more, and, you can get some, nice, juicy opinions out, or what you think. What do you think? Have you got any final word for the viewers?
Just watch the episodes. Why would you listen to like an hour's worth of people talking about an episode you've not watched? We're talking about camera angles and stuff, for crying out loud. Watch the episode, or you're going to be bored out of your mind.
You know what? He's very true. Josh, are you about to get dressed?
Yes, I am. So for the viewers at home, this is a treat. I have no top on.
Just as dishy as Ian, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Next week, we will be watching The Survivors, which is a very good. Actually, what do you think of the title? Just before we end.
Brilliant title, because it can be viewed in so many different ways. But we'll get on to that.
But this title, The Dead Planet, I think that's
Dead Planet. Yeah, absolutely fitting.
It's a Doctor Who title. Perfect. Yeah, next week.
Very intriguing title.
A sexy title.
Yum.
Next week we'll be talking about The Survivors, so please, if you've got anything you'd like to say about that beforehand, please leave us a comment, leave us a message or a comment on any of our posts on Twitter or Facebook. Just don't slide into our DMs, please.
No.
But now we've said that, some people might do it.
Oh, we get stalked.
People looking for a picture of you with your top off.
Yeah, they will be. Don't find it.
Is that sort of thing on the internet?
No, it's not. I don't.
That's worrying. Anyway,
I assure you, there is not a single picture of me with my top off on the internet.
I could take one and put it up though on the page.
You'd have to get one first, and that's just weird.
I'm sure, one day that'll be on the internet.
Well, until that day, I'm going to say right now, I'm free from judgment.
Anyway, that is the end of the review. We will see you all next week. Please don't imagine Josh is the topless body, unless you want to.
I've been one of my many different personas that I use for social acceptance. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's the end of that.